This is the real McGilla. This is a guy who flies more than any pilot at American, United, or Delta sitting across from me right now. It's good to see you, Brother John.
Good to see you, Pete. Yeah, this is a little trip up to New York for Larry Kudlow's show tomorrow night.
Nice.
So
Larry's a great guy, great friend, has a great outlook on the markets, and he's got his political side and his financial side, and he's a pretty brilliant guy, I would say, John. He's a lot of fun. You're going to have a great time on there.
Oh yeah, I was lucky enough, Pete, to go to his house before this 2016 election. Like a month before, 2 weeks before, he invited me up, and there were a whole bunch of people that I am sworn to secrecy over that were there from both parties, because Larry is that guy. I mean, he might have his own outlook, but he invites people from both sides. And there were I think probably 14 or 15 of us there, Pete. Yeah. And still a great guy. I mean, when I was at Fox a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I guess, he came in and said, "Hey, when are you coming on my show?" And I said, "Larry, all you got to do is ask." And before I was 10 blocks away, I got a phone call from his producer saying, "We want you and Pete on the show." And you've already talked to the producer too, Pete. So
I have. Yeah, I'll tell you what, those
happen.
people over there, they're outstanding, John. I love how friendly they are. A lot of them end up being Minnesotans that moved out there. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of people on air for Minnesotans who moved out there. So some really great people for sure. And that producer is wonderful. And shoot, you've had a great experience with a lot of those guys over there already. And I'm just beginning to expand a little bit. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, they're looking forward to having you on.
That'll be fun.
Folks, you are tuned in to the Rebel's Edge. We're going to hit you with a little macro, but we're not going to beat you over the head with it like some places do. We're going to hit fantastic futures. We're going to hit 4 stocks that you need to be paying attention to. And then we'll hit a little sports. So I think you'll be surprised that in the budget deal that they've struck, one stock in particular is moving up big, bigger than most takeovers. And we'll have that for you. But Pete, let's start off with the macro minute. Give it all the respect it deserves. The tough part is not done. The easy part was Biden and McCarthy getting together and saying, "Okay, let's not be stupid. Let's do something." Now they got to get it through Congress. And there are at least 5 members of the Republican side that are unlikely to acquiesce. I don't know if this is going to pass on the first round, Pete. How about you?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of opposition out there, John. I think it's going to be a little bit of a problem, and it's going to have to happen fast, right? I mean, here we are. We always talk about, well, they're going to wait, they're going to drag their feet, and they're going to get there at some point. But I don't know, John, right now. I think that's partially why we're seeing the markets react the way they are, and how they reacted last Friday as opposed to how they're looking today. I think that speaks volumes about where people are stand right now. I think they're just confused and don't think that this deal's necessarily a slam dunk like a lot of folks started to think on Friday.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're at, Pete. And that is the macro minute. Now let's dive into fantastic futures. Jared keeps extending that echo long enough. We'll have just fantastic futures. That'll be the end of the show. But good job, Jared. Yeah. Fantastic futures for me, Pete. Cotton futures. They're up 2% today. They're up about that much for the year. And yet I have a strong feeling, Pete, that if somebody was to write us and say, "Well, why are they charging so much more for jeans this year than last year then?" And it would be because they can.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. I'm going to quickly hit this one, John. How about wheat prices? Now, we don't talk about this very often for all the right reasons. I mean, it's not one of those exciting things that you usually like to hit. But when you see something that's down 26% year to date and 47% in the last year and sitting on the lows, literally sitting on the lows. It started today at 616. It went all the way down and it's traded all the way down to 592. That's going to be an issue, John, going forward. I know nobody really wants to think about it, but when you think about a lot of what's going on, wheat is another one of these commodities that we all should keep an eye on as well. And that price has gone down, 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 down. And it's looking like there's no stop at this point in time.
Yeah, I would say it's suspicious, Pete. Some of us would say that there are so many of these commodities that are not up, and yet prices of everything are up. And it ain't just the $15 an hour that they scrape together to give these people out of the goodness of their black hearts either. All right, let's hit Pete. The big winner in the debt talks is Equitrans Midstream Corp. And a lot of you don't even know what the heck that is. It's ETRN. It was up almost 40% today, Pete. First hour, it traded 12 million shares in the first, actually 45 minutes. Normal full session is 6. So everybody is getting on board this train. Woo, woo, because they operate and acquire midstream assets in the Appalachian Basin, but it's gathering, transmission, and water, Pete. And this is one of Joe Manchin. This is a project he's wanted through for a long time. Looks like he's going to get it.
It does look like he's going to get it, John. That's why this thing is spiked the way it has. An absolutely incredible move, as you just described. I mean, this is not a kind of stock that moves 30% in a day. And yet, here we are. I mean, this thing has absolutely exploded to the upside. Really nice move. This is your typical 10% yield. You're not expecting a whole lot of movement. Well, they're getting movement now because if those permits go through, John, that opens things up from West Virginia to Virginia. That's a really big deal. Manchin knows it. Let's see. He's out of West Virginia. Yeah. That's amazing how that whole thing works. But anyway, it's a great move on the stock. I wouldn't expect to see this thing continue on this move to the upside the way it is. But RBC certainly did not just sit on their hands, John. They raised it from a $7 to a $10 price target. So I think that they understand very well that this is going to be something big if everything holds up.
Yeah, I mean, this is one, Pete, that, do you sell it? No, not really, because I think the reason that it's up is so strong because they're just like any midstream. They take a little toll, Pete, for everything that passes through there. And sooner or later, this deal is going to be done. And I think, in particular, because of the water component here, they're going to get this one done. It's not like, they're trying to put an oil pipeline underground near a water aquifer or whatever. Right. This is something completely different, but we'll see. And Manchin's a powerful dude.
Yep.
What about AI, Pete? Because there couldn't be a better endorsement than what the guys said last week with NVIDIA when they were just, all gushy over how much demand they're going to see, visibility out a couple years into the future. Well, they have earnings tomorrow, I noticed, Pete. They're expected to announce about 75 million in revenue, not profit, revenue. And yet this thing is screaming higher yet again. And I have a feeling, Pete, it's not because of this quarter. It's because of what they might see in the future.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the whole story of AI, John, has really caught fire, and everything that's attached at all to AI, you're going to have a stock that's moving to the upside. This is one of them for sure. And as you mentioned, just an absolute, just unbelievable move to the upside. And you still got earnings. And we even see a little bit of unusual options out there. So there's a lot going on with this particular name. When you look across and you see what's happening with NVIDIA is just absolutely into the moon right now, John, and Qualcomm. So you've got that combination, and then add anything else to AI. This is something where they're tying themselves with AWS in the marketplace, and that is something that you get involved with Amazon. That's usually not a bad thing either, John. So I think this thing's made a parabolic move, but that doesn't mean it's over, and it's going to be interesting to see just how high it gets. It had an unbelievable run early, eased back off of those new 52-week highs, but it's an amazing thing right now. If AI is in it's like the old days of the .com era, right? I mean, if you had certain things in your acronym of your stock or your names of your stock, it's going to move. And that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Pete, 2 weeks ago, this thing was 19 bucks. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, folks, because it hit 41 today. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a little, I mean, earlier back in April, it did trade up to like, let me see, 35, I think, or so, Pete, 34. Yeah. Came all the way back down to 19. I think they're going to give such guidance that this thing's going to keep going, Pete. I don't think that anybody if you're short this thing, it could be a world of hurt tomorrow. Let me just say that.
All right. There are 24, 27% short interest in here, John. So you want to talk about, we're already seeing the beginnings of a short squeeze. I don't think that's over with yet either. Just to your point, there's a lot of shorts and they are getting beat up and they're reaching now and they're squeezing this thing.
60 some odd million share turnover so far today, folks. New 52-week high. All right. We mentioned NVIDIA, and we had to mention it because they became the first chip maker to cross $1 trillion mark, Pete. But the law of large numbers, they can't stay there. They can't go any higher because that law applies to what? Not stocks. There's no reason it should apply to stocks. If all of a sudden any of these companies, Pete, could make gasoline out of water, what would that company be worth? How many $1 trillion?
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, John, how about this? Year to date, it's up 180%. Yeah, 180%. I mean, so this is a stock that is absolutely catapulted into the stratosphere. But to your point, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and some of them, they released even more. They already had their earnings. That was huge. Stock made an unbelievable gap to the upside. But when you give those numbers that they gave, and they were absolutely extraordinary. I mean, they're talking about guidance, John, the sales up 64%. This is a company that's pretty mature and been around a while. To see those kind of numbers is just eye-popping. But everything that they're doing, and they released even more information over the weekend. Each day, something else leaking out. That's why we're seeing this big spike to the upside. It does trade at an obscene 84 forward PE right now. But given what's going on and some of the growth that they're talking about and the guidance that they've given us, you know what? I don't want to be in front of that truck, John.
No, you get run over. And this one is also hurting the shorts. Now, granted, some people will probably say, oh, yeah, I shorted it today when it was up 25 bucks and it's only up 14 bucks right now. You had to have you had to be very brave to short it. Much better idea to buy a put or put spreads if you wanted to do that. But Pete, the highest price target on this one puts it on a par with Google at $1.6 trillion. So if these guys fill up that coffer with what that guy's smoking, I think this one could be just one of those crazy wins of a lifetime. All right, let's talk about Chinese stocks, Pete, because basically a lot of the Chinese stocks have slipped into, believe it or not, bear market territory. If you look at the market peak this year, it's down 20.4%. Now, 20% is usually a bear market once you get over 20%, and they're in that territory right now. So pretty strong sell-offs, despite the fact that so many people keep buying Chinese stocks on the dip. So far, Pete, they haven't been right.
Yeah, people who are banking on the recovery, and the recovery is not quite what they were banking on, quite honestly, John. And when you go across and you see a lot of these Chinese names, where did they start the year? Where are they now? You'll probably be a little bit surprised to see the bad results that we are seeing so far. I mean, we've got a couple that are actually up on the year, but very few. Very few. Matter of fact, I think Baba's one of the few that's actually up on the year, but you go through JD and PDD and a lot of these names that people may or may not know, but they're in the gaming industry, they're in internet retail, they're in this or they're that. They are not performing the way people would have expected, John. And because of that, it's making for a very, very interesting time. You and I see a lot of activity in some of these ETFs out there, that composites of different types of some of these names. but even those haven't been able to pan out very well either. So, it's across the board. It's not just a couple of stocks. It's many, a good large percentage of these stocks that are struggling this year so far from China.
Yeah, it's been a rocky road for those guys, Pete. Although Musk was over there today, he would not talk. By the way, the people in China elected not to talk to Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, but they did talk to Elon Musk about Tesla.
That's a statement.
That is a statement. All right, let's talk a little sports, Pete, shall we?
Yeah. Well, John, we've been talking about this one for a while. It makes all the sense in the world to keep on covering it because the number 8 ranked hockey team in the NHL was the Florida Panthers. The number 8 ranked basketball team going into these playoffs was the Miami Heat. And what did they do? Well, both of them, actually, the Panthers took care of business as fast as you could imagine. They've been sitting around waiting, John, for the next opportunity. Well, they're going to be playing the Las Vegas Knights. Talk about a lot of travel and a lot of fun. That series should be great. But how about the way the Heat, they were up, John, 3-0. They went to the Garden on the first 2 games. They actually got them. They got them good. They came out of there 2-0. They come back to Miami, struggle a little bit, but all of a sudden the next thing you know, you're 3-0, but Boston didn't just walk away. They continued to play. They tied it up at 3-3. And then you had the final game to see who gets to go to the championship. Whether you want to or not, you're going to have to face the Denver Nuggets, who are absolutely exceptional. But the Heat, John, and Jimmy Butler and what those guys managed to do. I don't know if you saw Game 6, but they put a little extra time on the clock. The guy, they miss the shot, and then the guy tips it in, but he got a legitimate tip, but it was with the extra, 1 second or whatever it was that they put back on the clock.
9/10.
Oh, it was unbelievable. But all of a sudden you got there, and Jimmy Butler kept saying, we are not going to lose to these guys. We are not. Well, they lost 3 in a row, but he was right. They finally got one. And I'll tell you what, he was the catalyst. He's the guy that you and I have both talked about time and time again. And Kristen and others that have introduced you to him before. Jimmy Butler's just as hard a working guy as I've ever seen, John. They won't go down just swinging because these guys are going to continue to come at Denver. But I'm going to go out early and say, you know what? I think Denver's got them, and I think they get them probably in 5, maybe 6 games.
Well, Denver is definitely favored, Pete.
Yeah.
I was looking up the odds on it, and it's you're basically, if you want them to win, they are a favorite, but we have seen how the Heat can go on streaks, and when they go on a scoring streak, it is Katie bar the door. So, like you say, Jimmy Butler has been Mr. Everything, but they've got other guys. It's not just Jimmy. So I'm excited for it. It's not like I'm rooting against the Nuggets, not at all. I think they're an exciting team to watch too. But since you got on the Heat early, that's why I lean towards the Heat, Pete. But man, the way the Nuggets handled the Lakers and just shocked them.
Yeah, just to remind everybody, by the way, LeBron got swept. I say LeBron because everybody talks about him being some form of a GOAT. Well, I'll tell you what, John, how many times did Michael Jordan get swept in a 7-game series?
Never.
0. Yeah. Zilch. So I think that says a little something. All right, John, how about we jump to Major League Baseball? And the reason I wanted to go there, John, is this is something that you and I have talked about this forever because football is so different. It's pretty active and everything. Hockey's very active, but baseball, there's so much downtime. And a lot of people have said, well, what's going on? The fans are just going like this. They're going down, down, down. Well, this year, John, they made a couple of rule changes. The pitch clock, the shift, the larger bases, all of those things, whatever, it has made the game a little more exciting, and they've taken off about a half hour off of these games. Well, what are the results, at least early on? Well, attendance is up 5%, and on TBS, they reported their viewers were up 63%. So it gives you a little bit of an idea, John, of if you give the people what they want. They love baseball. They want to watch baseball. Those who are really into the sport will always be there. but you got to get the attraction of the younger people as well to keep this mojo going. Well, I think they've done a great job with that whole thing. You got to give credit to everybody in the C-suite of Major League Baseball because they had to go out. They made the changes. The changes weren't so dramatic it ruins the game. It just speeds things up a little bit because the game was going down the drain. Now I think you can watch these games and say, you know what? Baseball's back. Baseball's fun. And they're starting to get a lot more younger fans as well.
Yeah. And Pete, I know you had a little something here also about the Yankees manager.
Oh, yeah. Aaron Boone.
Yeah. And I've met him, Pete. Sadly, the Grand Havana Cigar Lounge here in New York is closed forever, I guess.
Really?
But yeah, I know. But I met him up there at an event with my friend James DeMonicus and JD at the time, I think was with Wheels Up, Pete. And he'd just come off a stint with Worth magazine, and he got Aaron Boone up there, you know, who had just been declared the Yankees manager. Super nice guy, but boy, he's under a lot of pressure in the last 10 games because he's gotten thrown out of 3 of the last 10.
I think, John, now he's been this year at least, he's been tossed out of 4. He's been ejected two times in the last 4 games. And then he was accused of spitting on one of the guys. Now, in all fairness to him, John, he was angry. He was, going after those umps like they all do. And I don't think he actually spit on him. I think spit came out of his mouth, but not on purpose. I don't think he actually.
It wasn't like he leaned back and threw one at him or something.
Yeah, he wasn't that bad. But you know what? We both know I'll tell you this. I read about a bunch about all of these times where he's been thrown out this year. You know who loves him? His players, because he defends them. And as a matter of fact, the last time he got chucked out of there, the pitcher thanked him for coming out and doing what he did because they kept calling it balls when it was strikes. It was getting really frustrating. And the pitcher had to throw so many pitches, John, in the first couple of innings that he had to come out of there. And, it's, I think sometimes people lose track of the fact that these managers are pulling for their players. They're doing everything they can. I think that Boone probably is a little bit hot under the collar, but I think the players really, really like it because you and I both know as former NFL guys, when your coach backs you up, you feel a hell of a lot better about things. When he comes out and says, no, Najarian did the right thing or whatever it is, that's meaningful, I think, for the players.
Yeah. And for the players to, especially in today's age, Pete, with the players making what they make, it's really tough to be their leader when they're making, against most managers, they're making 10 times what the manager's making. And yet they're grown men and they do need, to coalesce and come together as a team. And if he can make them do that, great. It is worrisome, though, 3 times in 1 week or so. And like you say, 4 times for the year. But I agree that that spitting incident was more of he had a lot of vitriol with the way he was going after the ref, and he didn't, throw one out there at him. But, if you got to throw him out for doing what he did, for arguing with him, because he was already ejected, Pete.
Yeah,
he was already ejected when he did it. But I really enjoy him. I think he's a fun manager to watch. Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us, folks. We didn't have a Monday Rebels Edge, but we just finished episode 158. We'll have episode 159 tomorrow. We hope you all join us then. Have a great day.